to interrupt everyone having such a wonderful time. We're certainly glad that you're here. I'm Donna Merck, the museum director, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the South Dakota Art Museum. We are excited to have this wonderful activity here tonight that is part of the Signe Stuart Events in Time and Space exhibition. Before we get started, I wanted to just take a moment to thank all of our sponsors. So to Ben and Deb Linke, thank you, and to South Dakota Humanities Council. We also offer our appreciation to Raina Martin, Dr. David and Patricia Meyer, Dorothy and Jim Morgan, and the South Dakota University School of Design. And there's a whole bunch of University School of Design folks here. Hello. We also want to say thanks to South Dakota State University Academic Affairs and the College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Please help me thank these and the other sponsors that have made this exhibit program possible. People that I need to say thank you to are our donors. Because of our members and donors, things like this are possible. We receive significant operational support from South Dakota State University and also support from the South Dakota Arts Council. And because of that, when you give as members and donors, your dollars go directly to fund incredible exhibitions and programs like this. So thank you so much. So if you've ever had a little bit of conversation with me, I hope you've heard me tell you what an absolutely incredible team we have here at the South Dakota Art Museum. And so it is my pleasure to turn the floor over to our curator of collections and exhibitions, Taylor McKee.
I know so many of us are thrilled to celebrate her together. It's been an honor for me, Donna, Amy, and the rest of the museum staff to work with Signe on making this exhibition a reality. It was a real challenge to distill her career into a retrospective exhibition of just 28 artworks. Her work is consistent in its exploration of technique, media, and of the events in time and space that connect us all. We're all inclined to claim Signe as a South Dakota artist, since she was a professor at South Dakota State University and lived here in Brookings for over 20 years. But her influence on art in America and other artists exceeds boundaries. It is an honor to welcome her and her family back to South Dakota. Please help me in welcoming Signe.
Okay, I really feel like I'm on the hot seat. I know people are expecting me to talk about like individual works, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you something instead to think about for yourselves. So I have my little crib sheet here, and let's get going. But before that, I want to thank Donna and Taylor and Amanda and Hannah for everything. They've done a great job. Okay, time for glasses. I think in the catalog you may have read something, a statement that said, "I make art to see what my ideas look like." And that's been the way I've worked for a very long time. And so then people will say then, well, where do those ideas come from? So I'm going to kind of go through a sort of logic that I adapted from probably a lot of readings from new physics, quantum physics, that deal with subatomic particles and the ideas of consciousness. So basically, why are we who we are? Where did we come from? Why are things the way they are? That's kind of where I come from. I mean, that's what I think about, and that's why I make what I do. So, first of all, so everything I talk about now is going to be kind of random. Instead of, don't expect anything logical, because it won't happen. So, for example, everything is random until you focus on it and make it your own. So I'm going to focus on a lot of random things that give clues about what I do. And then you're going to have to figure out and put it all together. So that's what viewers are really supposed to do. I make the artwork, a viewer completes it. That's true of every artist, not just me, everybody. So just to go even further, humans are tool makers. We're all makers of something. And art is a tool, I've discovered. I used to think it was kind of useless. You know, I don't make anything that people can put water in and carry around or live in. I make something that goes on the wall. And it's so, a lot of people will say, well, that's not utilitarian. But it is. It's a tool that opens your imagination. And we all need that, especially now. And what imaginations do is reveal ways of thinking and looking at things that you had never thought of before. So Einstein said that imagination is infinite and more important than knowledge. And so I'm going to segue from that to, I don't know, there's a biography of an artist who I'm very familiar with and think his work is wonderful. His name is Robert Irwin. And he's a California artist who works mainly with light. And the title of his biography is Seeing is Forgetting the Name of the Thing One is Looking at. And if you think about that, you start to think about what is the difference between seeing and looking. Everybody looks at things, but not everybody sees things. We all see differently. And so if forgetting the name of what you're looking at, what it really means is when we look, we'll say we're driving down the street and we say, oh, there's a car. Okay, we've categorized that looking into an idea of car, and we're not really focusing on what that car is, how you describe it, the color, the texture, the shape. We're just saying car. So what seeing is saying, forgetting categorizing everything, start looking and focusing. And because of that, once you start seeing, you will have attained a kind of wonder, a wonder about the world, how exciting it is and amazing. My work doesn't, and it never has depicted people or landscape or things or events in a way of that you would say represents them. And it's not because I think those aren't important, but because I am more interested in why those things look that way. And they look that way because of what I have learned about the quantum world. Everything that we are made of, everything the universe is made of, is quantum particles that are in fields of energy, gravity, electromagnetic, whatever, constantly moving. Everything is always in flux. And that's hard to grasp that idea when everything around you looks like something that you're familiar with and has solidity and you can touch it and you think, okay, how can what's there be constantly moving? But it is. And there's this paradox between what you see and what really is. And so what really is what I'm interested in. Because of the way the quantum world works, because like all neutrons and protons and electrons are exactly the same. We're all made of that. And yet look how different we look. It's because of the arrangement, the diversity. That's the diversity we have. And so, you know, it's like, I mean, the world is a miracle, the universe. Let's see. Okay, I'm skipping around. So I'm gonna mention a few things that might describe the way I work. I've always worked abstractly. I always experiment a lot before I make anything. Because experimenting helps me discover things that I wouldn't know if I just kind of worked as an automaton. I have to experiment. And it's very important to me. The surfaces of my work are always altered. Yeah, they are. Because I like to change, like if I'm working on canvas, I like to sew it or do something that changes a surface and kind of makes it mine before I actually paint on it. So I'm not just taking a piece of cloth and stretching it and painting on it. I have to do something to it first. I think of the surfaces of what I work on as really as chunks of space and time. Take a blank canvas or a blank piece of paper, that is a chunk of space and time. And what I'm trying to do on it is make an event happen. And that event is what I am interested in, and what a viewer thinks about it, that's up to them. I think about a comment that Gertrude Stein said, and it sort of applies to my show and everything I've ever done over like 60 years. Everything is the same, but different. Other things that are kind of clues, there's always uncertainty when I work. I never know exactly what's going to happen. I have an idea, but the idea is always open to change. I don't have like, okay, this is the formula, I'm going to carry this out. Once I get started, all kinds of things can happen. A lot of times accidents happen, and you either try to figure out a way of dealing with that, or you just throw it out. Okay, excuse me. All of my works emphasize line. When you're a visual artist, you're working with a vocabulary that color, line, shape, texture, space, materials. So mine happened to emphasize line. It wasn't something that I set out and said, I think I'll use line. It just sort of developed over time, because you have to give yourself time to find out who you are. And who you are isn't static. That changes all the time too. All of my works, I think, in some way deal with endlessness or infinity, or the idea of transcending something. And that's why I don't like frames. I know some works have to be framed to protect them, but I personally prefer not having frames. A frame limits, it makes you think of only what's inside instead of expanding. So a lot of my works have gradations of color, and gradations are a way for me to express time. It's kind of like layerings of sediment, and it doesn't look like it, but for example, that painting has probably 30 to 40 layers of paint. So I like to build things up until I feel like they're finished. Proportion is of special interest to me. Some things have to be big. Because I feel like scale has a presence, and if it's too small, it doesn't work the same as when it's kind of an environment that you can feel encompassed by. The small paintings that I make are kind of more intimate, and so that means you get up close and look at the detail. And it's important to me that you get up close even to the larger ones, because there's plenty of detail there too. Chance is an element that we all deal with. Things can happen out of the blue. Chance is, I find, an ally to the way I work, because I can be working and then an accident will happen. And I'll go, damn, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And somehow or other, I either figure out I have to rethink the way I'm working, or I have to say this is a failure. So chance is an opportunity to grow. And that's why I think it's an ally. Let's see. Excuse me. I think I've already said this, and so I'm going to kind of close with this, and then you can ask me questions. When an artwork is finished, it goes out into the world, but I finish it, it's kind of not quite finished, because viewers are the ones that really complete an artwork. And I think that's true of people who perform. If you go to a theater performance, what's happening on stage is completed by you, because you're the listener and you're the person who's interpreting. So that's the same thing with visual arts. You are the person that completes the artwork. And thank you for doing that.
How much of your life's experiences influence your art?
All of it.
I mean, you've had many positives and many negatives in your lives, like we all have.
Sure.
Does that change your direction? Does that influence what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, I think, sure, because I think we're all a composite of every experience we've ever had. And if you have a negative experience, you can allow it to influence you, or you can choose not to. So choice has a lot to do with it. So yes, I think I've had all those experiences, and a lot have influenced me, and a lot I've chosen not. Yeah.
Are you cogent of that change when it happens?
I think it's unconscious. Yeah. Yeah, I think, well, I was talking to Eric the other day, and we were talking about overthinking. And I think if you think too much, like trying to do something can get in the way of actually doing something for me. And I think a lot of artists would agree with that overthinking puts limits on you, whereas letting go is better.
One of the things that always amazed me about you as a teacher is that all of your students that pursued art have different styles. Nobody is Signe 2, Signe 3.
Thank God.
How did you inspire people in such a personal way? How did you help people find their own voice rather than want them to replicate you?
Well, it's not intentional. I mean, I'm not there as a teacher to become a formula for other people to emulate. As a teacher, you try to let help people open up and have their imaginations work. Yeah, you don't want them to be you.
So then how did they influence you as you? were
Oh,
working?
oh, boy.
I mean, both ways. I think the two go
Oh,
together.
I can tell you, teaching design class, for example, is great because I would have a project or a problem and state the problem, and you get, if you have 15 students in a class, you get 15 versions of that problem. And it's an epiphany because it opens you to the idea that there's an infinite number of answers to almost anything. And so that's inspiring. That's diversity. That's the way nature is. Yeah.
You remember the, yeah,
I don't know if I can hear you, so
yeah, I can speak up. Do you remember, when did you first start sewing canvas?
yeah.
When did that first make its way into your work?
I started doing that, okay. In the early 60s, I was an abstract expressionist. And so one of my old abstract expressionist works is up there in the exhibit. And I was doing that for several years, and it became like almost rote. I was just doing it and thinking, boy, these are good, but they're so easy. So why am I doing this? And so I thought, I'll stop doing this and see if I can find something else. And so I just started with black and white materials. Could be, oh, I changed it. It was burlap too, so it was a little brown in there. But I just started playing with materials. And that experimenting with stuff leads to a lot of discovery. And I discovered at that time that one of the things I could do with canvas is sew it. I could cut it, I could sew it, I could do a lot of different things with it. And sewing allowed me to get a line that was in relief. And that was important. And I don't know why it was important, but I recognized it as being important.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about,
I don't think I can hear you unless you scream.
sorry, I'll speak up. You mentioned Robert Irwin.
Yeah,
I'm curious about some of your other artistic influences.
other artistic influences.
Artists that you were looking at in the 60s.
Oh, wow, there are a lot of them. Joan Mitchell, an abstract expressionist. I love abstract expressionism. And after like 40 years of not doing anything like with brush strokes that could do that, I started making scroll paintings, and it allowed me to have that loosened kind of brushwork that I can't do with my sewn paintings because it doesn't work there. And so I'm kind of moving back. I'm trying now to figure out a way of bringing everything together. But I don't want to try too hard because it won't work. Oh.
So over the years, you've worked a lot with color.
What?
You've worked a lot with color.
Yeah.
A wide range of colors together. And it seems in recent years, you've honed down to a lot of paint, a lot of works with just blue. And I'm wondering how you got to that point, or what that is.
I think color is intuitive. I'm not trying to use color to describe something I'm looking at. So if I'm doing a painting, after I've sewn it and stretched it, it's just this white ghost. And I just look at it, and it suggests itself to me. That's all I can tell you.
Okay.
Yeah. But the paper pieces, I want them to be white. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I've noticed that some of your large paintings look as though they are separate canvases
They are.
stacked up on one another, and I'm wondering, is it a practical reason or?
Yes, it
Yeah,
started that way, yeah. Um, the panels came out of a couple of things. I wanted to work big. I knew that I couldn't ship anything big. I couldn't afford it. So I decided I could make a big painting if I have a bunch of panels that I can put together. Yeah. So it started that way, and the panels are also influenced by Asian, Japanese art in particular. I love the form of the scroll paintings and the shoji screens and things like that.
Well, I'm just curious, what was you like as a child?
What were, you'd have to ask my mom.
Did you like really tedious things and very patient or?
Well, I was the youngest of 4 kids, and my parents were immigrants, and so we didn't have a lot of money. And I just remember as a kid that I had paper that I played with, and I would fold it and make things and stand them up. I did that a lot. Yeah. And then when I got to grammar school, first grade was an easel and paint pots, and I had a great time doing that. So I was always encouraged to do and not being told what to do, because if anything bugs me, it's telling me what to do. Oh,
so Signe, you had said earlier that the sewing or,
could you speak louder, Sheila?
you had said earlier that the sewing or making some sort of cutting or something onto the canvas put you into a comfort zone that you were able to start. What would you do to put yourself out of the comfort zone?
Wait a minute, say that. Somebody tell me that.
We've got Sheila, we've got a microphone behind you.
Good evening, everybody. You had said earlier that you got to the point where you became comfortable when you could approach a piece if you sewed or cut onto the piece to prepare it to start your work. That became your comfort zone.
A comfort zone.
Yeah, I thought you used that word, comfort zone.
I don't remember that, did I?
Yeah. So that became your starting point.
Yeah.
All right, we'll say that. What would you do, or what brought you to the point where you do something that made you uncomfortable?
Okay. That was a good question. Well, I think almost every time when you start something, there's this kind of paradox where you think, I know what I'm doing, and at the same time, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think a lot of artists might agree with that, there's always this two-sided issue. I'm gonna resort to a story from physics again. It's a story about Schrodinger's box, and Schrodinger's box was a cat in a box. The box had poison in, and the cat, according to the physicist's thought theory, was the cat was both alive and dead at the same time. So to answer your question, the work is both comfortable and uncomfortable at the same time, because you never know from one minute to the next if you're going to keep going in the direction that you think is going to work, or something happens and it doesn't. So it's this constant back and forth the whole time. Yeah. Does that answer anything?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think that anybody in this room has been an artist probably said, oh yeah, that's it right there.
You keep referring to physics.
Okay. You keep referring to physics, quantum physics. I'm just curious what your scientific background is.
It's okay, biology class in high school, chemistry and physics in college. I just gravitate to that because I think I like the descriptions that come out of new physics, but I'm not interested in the math of it. So I know nothing about that. I admit that. But to me, I feel like my interpretation of that is like, instead of solving or describing the world with math, as physicists will do, I'm trying to describe it with visual metaphors. So, and they may not have anything to do with each other, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Signe, you read a lot though, too.
Huh?
You read a lot though, too. I mean, you're the one who told me to read Stephen Hawking.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Me? Oh, back to physics.
Yeah.
How important is the double slit experiment?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, and I've wondered recently why it's just a double split, why there aren't a whole lot of splits, because the same thing would happen, right? So you have a beam going through and it splits and they have the wave interference thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have the repeated
Yeah.
motif of waves.
Yeah.
thought
When I started the wave paintings, I wasn't even thinking about physics, that kind of physics then, because I didn't know about it. But I had this intuition that everything is made up of wavelengths. I mean, if you look at, how we hear and how we see things, photons and sound waves, everything is made up of some kind of movement. And then when I discovered that what's going on inside, say, an atom, where you've got the electrons just moving, it just makes sense. So, yeah. Hey.
Hi. Is there a marked difference between your work before you retired from teaching and after?
A marked difference? No, I'm still doing the same thing, but I'm making discoveries. Yeah.
Has the character of your work changed?
Yeah, a little bit, because those white pieces up there that are mulberry paper, yeah, those are different. I wasn't doing anything like that before. Yeah.
Thank you.
My question is very similar. How has making changed for you going from South Dakota to New Mexico? Very different landscapes, very different vibe. How has that changed for you?
Well, actually, I think there's a lot of continuity of space between South Dakota and New Mexico. It's kind of wide open. We have a few mountains that, interfere, but yeah, the space is the same. The light is a little different. Yeah, landscape has always influenced me because of the endlessness of it. And I know I'm influenced by landscape. Yeah, it's inescapable.
What brings you joy?
What?
What brings you joy?
What brought me to art?
No, what brings you joy?
Oh, what brings me joy? All you guys. Yeah.
How do you decide which ideas to put into art and which to just think about?
How did I decide? Could somebody help me here?
Which ideas to put into art or which to think about?
It's not conscious. I don't consciously say this is what I'm going to do. and this is how I'm going to proceed. I think it's mostly intuitive. Yeah. I think that gets to the overthinking thing. If I think too much about something, I know it's not gonna work out. I've learned that. That took me like 30 years to figure out.
So I guess on that note, do you have, or start with an idea, or do you start with the medium first? Do you sit down with
I think
canvas?
it's a marriage.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always a dialogue between material and idea. You can't escape it, you know. I mean, you're working with the material and it has its own limitations because we all do too. And so I'm working and I get to a point and I'm stuck. And I have to either work my way out of it or come up with a new solution. I don't know. It's always a process of discovery, and you're constantly mediating between what you think you're doing and what happens. And if you're too focused on your idea, if you think you have an idea of what something is supposed to look like, that hardly ever works. For me, maybe for other people it works.
Are you available to speak with afterwards?
I can't hear you.
Are you available to speak with afterwards? Well, a couple of things. One, I really appreciate that you showed pictures of your basement studio.
Oh.
Because I have a basement studio and I look at studio examples and things, and there's always lots of windows and beautiful light. And I feel very, I don't know, my studio's less than, but so I appreciate that. And I didn't really want to do this in public, but there's a former student of yours that sent me here. She regrets that she could not be here, and her name is Carla Michaels.
Oh, yeah.
And you were a mentor to her, and she wanted me to tell you that she loves you, and I was also supposed to give you a hug, but anyway, much love from Carla, and I'm so grateful that she sent me here.
Thanks.
Signe, over here, we got a couple.
I agree with her. From knowing you at a very early age and looking at your pieces throughout my life, and especially my early, you really influenced me. So now when I look at other people's art, I always think about yours, and that's sort of like the foundation, whether I like it or not. And you really impressed me upon me a lot in my early years, and thank you for that, because now when I look at a chair or table or anything, I think that's the basis for my design is that they're paintings. I mean, they come into me, and they're the part in the way I live, and thank you.
Thank you.
I have just a really basic question. What is mulberry paper?
I've been asked that question about 3 times today. It's a Japanese paper. It's made out of mulberry bark. And I use it because it has a consistency or a surface that I like to use. It's very absorbent, and I can buy very large sheets. So both of those things are important.
Then how do you get it into the form? How do you cut it? Or
how do I cut it?
And then get it to stay?
How do I?
Well, because it's cut into shapes and stuff.
Yeah, well, so are you talking about the big white pieces that are up there that I have?
Well, that's type, but like there, scored mulberry paper.
Okay, this is a really early piece that another experiment in a way. And I dampened the paper, and then I probably took something like a needle, some pointed instrument, and I drew with that, and I disturbed the surface, so it made those ridges in there. So it was a drawing with a needle instead of a pencil.
And then you color it,
Yeah, and then I painted.
and then how do you get it to stay? Or is it naturally stiff?
Is what stiff?
The paper.
The paper, no, the paper isn't stiff. The paper is kind of soft and absorbed. This is what I would call stiff. The paper is more, it's more soft and absorbent.
It's applied with a medium, correct, Signe?
What?
It's applied with a medium.
Oh, yeah,
That's what she's asking.
oh, okay, yes, I use a acrylic medium on it. Is that
And
what
then
you
that
meant?
gives it, yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause some of those are so tactile, it says do not touch, that's a good thing.
Yeah, they're
You
pretty
just
all-
wanna-
Yeah. Signe, can you take them through how you create those lacy white mulberry pieces, your more recent?
Oh, yeah,
mulberry
the
works?
big
Yeah.
multi-panel piece. Those started because I was experimenting with, I just had some mulberry paper and I thought, okay, what am I gonna do? So I had a, what familiarly know as a ketchup dispenser, a little nozzle on it. And I put some matte medium in that, and I thought, okay, I'll draw with this. So I just made a drawing on the white, not this, but the white mulberry paper. And it takes a while for a bead of matte medium to dry, so maybe overnight. So the next day I looked at it and I thought, I saw that where I had drawn was a concave line. And on the other side was looks something like an embossed line. And I thought, wow, I can use this. And that's how it got started. And then I decided to make a large panel, a drawing, because you can only do so much. You have to be careful how you make the lines or the paper loses its rectangularity. It won't sit flat. So there's a lot of more experimenting going on. And then I started to paint it. And because the paper is so soft, the brush would disturb the paper and make holes. And I thought, well, I don't think I want to repair all those holes. So I cut them out. And that's how that got started. And it got to the point of obsession and doing a lot of that. So I figured out a easier way since then, and I'm not telling anybody.
There's cut in the very few.
Yeah, there's an example right there, isn't it?
So Signe, talking about obsession, you want to talk about the big piece hanging in the middle gallery?
Yes. And I'm not doing that again either. That's made of pieces of Tyvek about this big, all glued together. And making that material, because that's what I think of it when it's not hanging. Took almost a year. And so doing it, I was just putting it together and listening to a lot of music and other things, and my mind was elsewhere. But it kind of fits with the idea that also relates to physics, where everything is interconnected and constantly in motion. So kind of fits with that.
One last question.
Okay.
In the back.
Well, I gotta ask what the music was you were listening to.
Oh, everything from Bach unaccompanied cello to Willie Nelson.
Well, everyone, we want to thank you so much for being here tonight. Please help me.